Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leadership Live by Sounding Board, where we talk with some of the most dynamic leaders in learning and development and people. I am thrilled to have Caja Kelly with me today from Visit Orlando, which is one of the top destination management organizations in the country, to one of the most visited places or cities in the United States. Caja has such an interesting background and has been in all aspects of training and development. So we're going to dive into some pretty interesting things and her perspective on training. So welcome, Caja.
Thank you, Christine, for having me. I am super excited to be here. Making sure that there's no thunderstorms coming by as we are in Orlando, but everything looks good right now. And did you want me to go ahead and just jump into the origin story, as you call it?
Yes, no. So one of the things that we love hearing from our guests is just a bit more about your background and your origin story and how that might have led you into the work that you're doing. And so I'd love for you to just share a bit with us on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to college, I did not even know that there were careers in training and organizational development. So I got a degree in communications and broadcast journalism. And I got a job at a teeny tiny TV station when I was running, the midday shows and the morning news. And my favorite guests to book were always the ones who came on that had something to teach. So maybe a financial advisor, or we had chefs, or really anyone to help you plan your 401k, or wellness people come on. And those were the ones that got the viewers the most calls and the engagement and participation. So that was great. And when you do well in TV news, they bump you up to different broadcasts. And I have the Oprah problem. I couldn't do the hard news because I was empathizing too much with the people. So I ended up working a part-time job in retail just to pay the bills because, again, TV news. And I had so much fun training new hires in that role. And I realized after being in retail for a few years and moving up that it's not just about selling clothes and selling product. We were selling confidence, right? When you work at a retailer and someone's coming in for a suit for their first interview, right? That's like a big deal. So teaching the associates and the teams really how to listen and sell, and the fact that you're not just selling a product, you're selling an emotion, confidence, you're selling someone's first day on a new job. And so those things really fascinated me. And then I learned that there was such a thing called instructional design. So I got a degree in that in UNF as I started doing more training because it was so fascinating to me. And then just every job I have been in since then, I've been in some kind of training role. So I took a job with Habitat for Humanity as a volunteer director, managing and training volunteers in AmeriCorps. It's interesting. You don't want me building the house, but I can help train you on how to be a great volunteer. I have also worked on Disney Cruise Lines on the ship. I was like a bridge officer between Disney University and the shipboard learning. So that was interesting as well. Learning, how to teach people how to inspect ice cubes for public health inspections. I'm like, how do I make this interesting, right?
Oh my gosh.
Wow. And then also, yes, I went to a restaurant group and did some training there as well. And then came to Visit Orlando, where I'm managing our training function for our team.
Well, wow. I have so many things I want to know after that introduction. I don't think we can get to how you train on ice cubes, but I have to ask you, this idea that you shared, because a lot of times when people think about training, specifically in the industries you've been in, you think of it more technically or more functionally, right? How do you do this job tactically? But you said something that is very unique, which was you felt like it was actually more than that. And, you were teaching a connection to the customer, sort of contextualizing their interactions with the customer to reflect what it was that brought them into the store to purchase or to join the cruise. How did you do that?
A lot of it is you start with creating that same experience for the associates, right? So when I was managing my own stores, and maybe this is me setting the bar kind of low, but my goal was I never wanted my team to dread coming into work, right? Like this is a part-time job for a lot of these people. And some of them is their first job, some is just a job after they retire. So I have to make it coming in enjoyable. So that kind of starts with the team. And then when you start to get the team feeling confident that they know what they're doing, they know about the product, something as simple as trying on. When I worked for Cole Haan in the shoe industry, everyone had to try on every brand new shoe that came in. It shouldn't sound like this big burden to try on shoes at work, right? But it was surprising that, you kind of had to push it a little bit to get people to try it. So once you have the confidence about the product, you know it, you've experienced it, then you can share it with your customers. So it's giving the team the confidence first, some knowledge in their back pocket as they're working with the customer. And when they experience the empathy and understanding from their management team, it's so much easier for them to translate it back to the customers.
My gosh. I mean, you're talking about, not just training, you're talking about, how you as a leader and manager are engaging your employees, right? To apply those skills and create an environment where they can do that successfully. I love that. Well, do you think that's related then to, you've been in this learning and development function and training for so many years? How does that relate to or support your broader vision of what you think L&D should be? Like, what's your dream of how that would look like in the organizations that you've been in?
Oh, wow. So my dream would be, I love the idea of the democratic learning, right? Everyone's got your subject matter experts, your SMEs. What we've done at Visit Orlando is our LMS allows us to give SMEs access to create their own lessons. So, if there's someone who says, oh, you know what, in our accounting system, people keep missing this one certain thing, they can go in there, create a lesson and assign it to people in the amount of time it takes to create an email. So I'll go back in there and maybe clean it up a little bit visually. But other than that, they design the content. It keeps them engaged. And then they're invested in it as well. They go back in there to see like, okay, who's passing the quiz? Who's not passing it? What are the questions they're missing? So I love that they're taking some of that off of my plate. But yeah, I love the democratic style of learning because you can learn from every level. So it doesn't just need to be top down, and that gets people more engaged too.
Well, and I think also that for many of the teams out there, you yourself are a one person, sort of one woman shop in terms of the pieces of training that you own. And that might be the case for some of our other community members as well. And so it felt like you were saying, look, think about ways to activate the employee base and the leaders around you to not only create, but now they're invested in seeing others actually learn that content. And it's not something that just you are solely responsible for.
Yes, I've got a little band with me, to make sure and follow up and, stay engaged and all of that and keep it on track. So that is a huge, huge resource when you're a one-person team.
Well, I want to dive a little bit further into some of the L&D initiatives that you have run. You shared a really interesting one with me beforehand of an initiative you did that you were really proud of. And I'd love for you to just share a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that was the chicken wing conundrum. I was working at a restaurant group founded here in Orlando that was getting ready to scale rapidly. They were going from 5 restaurants to 20 within a year and a half was the plan. So I did the tour throughout the state where we already have 5 restaurants. And one thing I noticed is that the chicken wings in every restaurant were different, right? Like in one city, they'd be a little puffier, and another city, they'd be a little crispier. And I wasn't really understanding why until I went through the kitchen training that I did. And we found that they were using plain old recipe books with laminated pages, everything written in English, and very few photos. So as I'm training along with people, I'm noticing they may not fully understand the directions. And it's kind of hard to explain in writing what the batter should look like as it's dripping off a chicken wing before you put it in the fryer. And so we looked at, several different LMSs, and they just weren't quite what we needed. So I kind of went on a random exploration of explainer videos, and we found this company that actually only does heavy machinery training. They
Oh,
have a
wow.
platform for it. I happened to find them on like some crafting website. They were doing a demo. So I called, and I think the sales guy was a little taken aback when I was like, well, we'd like to use this for restaurants. But it was really great. I got to learn to do some coding because we did have to change, nuts and bolts to tablespoons and teaspoons. But
Oh
what
my
was so great about it is that the chefs in the restaurants themselves could take the videos of what the chicken wing should look like before you drop it in the fryer, and
goodness.
everyone could watch it. It also translated into 10 different languages because depending on where we had a restaurant, the back of house language may have been Creole, or it may have been Spanish or Portuguese. So
Mm,
even just translating it into one language wouldn't have been enough. Plus,
yeah,
it's on an iPad, and we can push any updates out there, which is huge in the restaurant industry, because if an ingredient changes, we can
right.
automatically push that out to the restaurant so that they've got, everything they need for allergies and things like that. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, what I love about that is it felt like you actually really observed first to see what was the challenge and the problem that you were trying to solve. And that led you down. I haven't heard of many people that have gone all the way into repurposing software to fit their training needs. But I mean, that just kind of shows the lengths to which you felt like you understood the problem and what the right approach was to be able to actually teach that and develop that.
Exactly. It needed to be a partnership between the central kitchen and then
Yeah.
our chefs in the field also being able to communicate on the platform by uploading their own videos or adding comments and tips in there. So it could not be a top down. We needed to have it meet in the middle. So we really had to definitely source something different to tackle that problem.
Well, look, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because what I find especially fascinating, Kasia, about your role is that you might be running programs and initiatives that are very, I'd say, technically focused, skill driven. There is a very specific outcome that you're trying to drive through the training and the learning. And then you also are working on initiatives like ones you're doing with us, right? Where you're talking about very intangible skills, leadership development, professional development. And you had a great story about how that was a very different mindset shift, even in terms of pushing out this type of a program. So, I mean, tell us more about that.
Yes, absolutely. It was a huge mindset shift for us. Again, I'm that one person team, right? So when we have individuals with different needs, like, feedback or communication or whatever it is, it's harder for me to give that one-on-one time. And then sometimes it's also better to have an objective observer from outside doing
Yeah.
some of that coaching. So in looking around, we did, talk to several companies, and we love Sounding Board the most because of your values and the service that we've gotten. And so as we were getting ready to launch it, what was really interesting was the generational differences, the way they viewed coaching. Some of our, boomers, even Gen X, our C-suite and VPs, almost saw it as like am I in trouble because I'm getting a coach? Like, am I doing something wrong? Right. And so we announced it on an all team call for our team. And I was so excited to see the chat lighting up with our Gen Z and our millennials talking about how this is a game changer for our company. We're being so progressive. This is a huge investment. So their mindset was completely different. And
Yeah.
having those conversations, I even had a VP, tell me like, wow, I didn't look at it that way
Yeah.
until I heard someone else talking about it. And they're like, yeah, actually, I'm kind of proud to have a coach now because it's a huge investment, right? We're not going to spend this money in you if you're in trouble, right? We want to take you from like, level 10 to level 20.
That's right. That's right. I mean, and it's not unusual, especially for folks that are say later in career, because you're right. Coaching originally started out, my co-founder Lori when she was coached starting out 25 years ago, it was used sort of as a remedial approach, right? For correcting behavior or to help derail the executives. And so it was something that was done a bit more, say, behind the curtain. And it might have actually signaled that you were in some challenging positions, or, you know, there were some challenges you were facing. But I think that's so interesting to hear that story of like, you actually got to experience how that's completely shifted, where now we also see that companies are really adopting it for high potentials. They want to give it to as many people as they can because they see it as an accelerator.
It's
How
huge, and it's done a couple things for us. We had an engagement survey of our team that said they wanted more professional development opportunities. And we are more of a flatter organization. We're also best places to work, so we don't have a lot of turnover. So one of our challenges is when you don't have room in that promotion, how can we still invest in people's growth and development? So that's when we started to kind of look laterally. And when we first launched it out, you didn't hear a lot of people talking about it. And then slowly in our monthly leadership meetings, our participants started sharing. Like they would come into the meeting, they're like, okay, my coach just said the resilience is a muscle. So we're all going to practice our resilience, people. So they're sharing what they're learning from their coach in the larger group of leaders, which I think is just fantastic.
Well, I think that's one of the benefits people don't often realize, which is, and you know this very well, that it's also building this muscle of embracing learning, right? And growing and actually sharing that very openly and having that kind of get integrated more into your culture, that it's normal to be developing. It's normal to have things that you might not be comfortable doing yet, right? But that the importance is the practice of that and the continued commitment around that.
100% too. And our CEO also, participated in the pilot. Like, if we're going to have our team do it, I'm going to do it too and learn what this whole thing is. So it's been from the top down, just super engaged with everyone.
That's amazing. Well, can you tell me a little bit more? Last question on that, which is for something where you had these more broad sets of skills, right? People might have different types of leadership capabilities that they want to work on. How did you go about, almost like the way that you had done the chicken wings, how did you go about triangulating what was the right modality or the right approach to take for these types of, for a program that you wanted to roll out?
So a little bit of trial and error, kind of like most everything I do, right? Let's just see what works. So we started doing a lot of soft skill workshops in-house, virtual and also in person. So we started focusing on simple things like how to have an effective one-on-one as a leader, emotional intelligence, some of the basics, openness to feedback. And so the more that we had some of those, I started getting a lot of the meetings after the meetings, where after the meeting, people come up and they say, okay, that was great. What I really need is, more in depth on this. And can I just do it with you or someone else and not in a big group? Right. Which I would love to do if I had the bandwidth for it. And so that was where I started like, okay, there's a need out there for something a little bit more personalized than like a group workshop or even an online learning session. So that was when I was like, all right, what are our options here? So, we looked at different things like having, a seminar or having, a full day leadership program coming in. And I'll share with you, Christine, my pet peeve about some of those things is that they end up becoming like backseat trainings, which is where you leave the training with your binder and all your stuff. You get in your car, you throw it in the back seat, and then that's where it stays forever.
I love that you have a name for everything.
Yes, that's
but
what
I have such a visceral image now in my head, so I'll never forget that.
Yes, and so that's one of my pet peeves is when some program lacks sustainability. So, in looking at those, it's really hard to keep a positive trajectory with one single person if I don't have the bandwidth for it. So we started looking at different options. Coaching came up, and it really has been a truly fantastic fit. for us. It's been working very well. We're super excited.
Well, look, I mean, I think with the thread I continue to see in what you're doing is that you spent a lot of time understanding the problem, actually trying different things, and then iterating through the solutions or the ways that you were going to try and address that over time. I love that. I mean, we come out of the tech industry and there's this, how do you not fail fast, but how do you, experiment and iterate in order to get to the right response instead of trying to do that right from the get-go. And how have you been able to embrace that mindset? Because oftentimes people, of course, you want your programs to be successful, right? But how have you been able to embrace that mindset of iterating through these learning?
I think that goes back to my own mindset of, these are my clients. Is all of our team members, those are who I work for, right? They work for our visitors and our tourists, and then I work for them. So less of an order taker so much, there is some of that. And I think when you get to that order taker portion, it's all about asking the questions, right? Like, is it a training issue? Is it a mindset issue? Like, what is it? So kind of drilling down and asking those. But again, this is thanks to my 6th grade teacher, Mr. Hurlinger. It's all about, good, better, best. Never let it rest till the good gets better and the better is best. So it's what can we do to top it?
Wow. Okay. We definitely will have to include that in our post when we talk about this webinar. I love that. Well, if you'd believe it, Caja, we only have about 5 more minutes, but I do want to make sure that we sort of close with some advice for you that you can give to other L&D leaders out there. Is there anything that you think has contributed to your success that you'd like to share with others?
I would say 2 things. One is being curious, right? My advice to people is always go past the second page of a Google search, right? Like that's where the good stuff is. Keep looking. And just it's the curiosity, asking questions to determine, like what the team's needs are, how are they not being met, and then creating an environment where people are okay coming up to you just saying like, hey, I need some of this. Can you provide it, right?
Yeah.
So being approachable and then letting them know that we are here to serve the team. And so let us know what you want to learn, what you need improvement in, and we will deliver it for you. Yep. So that they are 100% my client base.
Amazing. I also want to remember or sort of remind folks that you also were talking about engaging those folks that come to you as part of the solution, right? And I think that's really smart because it helps further engage them in what you actually end up delivering.
It does. And it gives them additional growth opportunities as well, right? To either whether it's design or thinking about how to structure the lesson or even the follow-up piece of it afterwards. So there's so many benefits to it, not just for me, but also for the team, right? And for the actual team member who gets to practice doing something like that and really challenging them to understand the mind of the learner. Because I found, some people love to get in the weeds with the technical stuff. Yeah. And then when they see that lesson doesn't really resonate, it causes them to kind of back up and say, oh, you know what? Let me just give them what they need and then move on.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it also helps them appreciate the work that you do and realize that, it might sound easy, like, hey, just teach this person to do this until you actually have to sort of programmatically design that and think about how you deliver.
Yes.
So it looks like we have one question, and if it's okay, I would love to ask it just because we do have a little bit of time. One of the questions was, if you had any experience in peer-to-peer coaching and whether that could be structured or managed effectively.
I have not experienced it yet. However, I have been doing a lot of research on mentoring programs, peer-to-peer mentoring as a potential opportunity for us in 2024. Yeah. And what I'm looking at, from what I see, my plan will be to have a lot of structure for it. Some I see where the pitfalls are when you don't have the structure in there for the follow-up, and the continued engagement piece. So I would say look for something that is super structured to start off with. And then if you can let go of some of those reins as the program picks up, but keep it really structured and tight at first.
I would echo that as well. So at Sounding Board, we also have software that facilitates mentoring programs. And the thing that is a big difference than when you work with Sounding Board and you have a Sounding Board coach is that in that case, you have to understand the peer or the mentor may not have had experience delivering these types of mentoring or peer-to-peer experiences. So as much as the person receiving that, is coming into the program and needs structure, the person delivering that
Yes.
also may need more structure than someone that may be a professional instructor, facilitator, or coach. So I do think that thinking and philosophy is important, and also to help maintain and sustain those relationships over time, right? As you're getting them off the ground.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's a 6 month and then you've forgotten all about it.
Right. That's right. Well, thank you for jumping in and, answering that question. We now are really at the end of our time. So if you have any parting thoughts for the folks out there, anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I would just say go out there and be curiouser than you today. Be more curiouser today than you were yesterday, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I love it. Well, be curiouser. And thank you again, Caja, for the time today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you, Christine. You have a good one.
Okay. Stay warm and dry.
Thank you.
Bye.